They say business and friendship don't mix. I should have listened. 5 years we built that company together. 5 years of trust. But the first sign wasn't the money. It was the silence. When he stopped sharing financial reports, I wanted to believe everything was fine. Until that client meeting changed everything. Missing files. Hidden transactions. $250,000 gone. I became a ghost in my own company, watching, listening, gathering evidence. Because when someone betrays your trust, the only justice is truth. And I had the paper trail to prove it all. 5 years we built that company. 5 years of late nights, missed weekends, and postponed vacations. 5 years of trust. James and I started with nothing but a shared dream and complementary skills. I handled the creative side. He managed the finances. A perfect partnership, everyone said. The first sign wasn't the money. It was the silence. James stopped sharing financial reports. "I'll get to it," he'd say, eyes fixed on his computer screen. Things are hectic right now. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because questioning meant admitting something was wrong. The quarterly meeting with our biggest client changed everything. They mentioned a rate increase I'd never approved.
When I checked our shared drive later that night, files were missing.
Balance sheets I couldn't access. Client contracts with terms I'd never seen. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through bank statements. Transactions I didn't recognize. Payments to accounts I'd never heard of. $250,000. Gone. I sat in my darkened office until sunrise, the blue light of my computer screen illuminating the ruins of my trust. There must be an explanation, I whispered to myself. But the only explanation was the one I refused to accept. My partner was stealing from me. I became a ghost in my own company, watching, listening, learning. James continued as always, confident in his control over the finances. He didn't notice how I lingered after meetings, how I befriended the new accountant, how I stayed late copying files. I created a second email account and reached out to clients, asking innocent questions about their payment arrangements. According to our records, we sent the check to the address Mr. Wallace provided, one client wrote back. An address I didn't recognize. I started carrying a small recorder in my pocket. Legal in our state, as long as one party consents. That party was me. Great news, James announced at lunch one day. The Peterson account is finally paid up. I smiled and raised my glass. That's fantastic. When did it come through? Last week. Cleared on Friday, I nodded, feeling the weight of the recorder in my jacket. The Peterson payment had arrived a month ago. I had the bank records to prove it. To success, I said, clinking his glass. To success, he repeated, not knowing I'd just recorded his lie. My lawyer's office smelled of leather and authority. Linda Kane had been recommended by a friend. Ruthless but ethical, they'd said. Perfect. Tell me everything, she said. Hands folded on her immaculate desk, I placed my evidence before her one piece at a time. Bank statements, altered contracts, recorded conversations, emails from clients. She examined each item methodically, her expression unchanging. You've been thorough, she said finally. I had to be. He's not just stealing from the company. He's stealing from you personally, I nodded. We're 50-50 partners, she leaned forward. What do you want out of this? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? My money back? The business saved? I want the truth acknowledged, I said finally. And I want what's rightfully mine, she nodded slowly. The criminal charges would be significant. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. Possibly. I know. He'll go to prison. The word hung in the air between us. Prison. James, who'd been the best man at my wedding. James, who'd held my newborn daughter and promised to be her cool uncle. Is there another way? I asked. Linda's eyes softened slightly. There's always another way. But first, we need to secure the evidence before he realizes you're onto him. I left her office with a plan and a hollow feeling in my chest. The path to justice was clear, but it offered no joy. The company safe had always been James's domain. He'd chosen the model, installed it himself, kept the combination, or so he thought. 3 years earlier, I'd walked into his office unannounced and caught him opening it. My eyes had captured the sequence of numbers as his fingers moved. I'd never needed to use it before, until now, 2:15 a.m. The office building silent and dark except for the security lights. I told the night guard I was working late on a pitch. He knew me well enough not to question it. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, I found what Linda had predicted, a second set of books. The real records, showing the full extent of client payments. Next to them, a folder labeled Offshore, with account numbers and transaction details. I photographed everything, careful not to disturb the order. Then I found something unexpected. A small USB drive taped to the inside of the safe door. Back at home, I plugged it into my computer. It contained a single folder labeled Insurance with dozens of audio files. James had been recording our clients. Conversations where they admitted to tax irregularities, requested off-the-books arrangements, confessed to corporate indiscretions. He'd been gathering leverage, ensuring their silence if they ever discovered his schemes. I copied everything and returned the drive the next morning before anyone arrived. "You're in early," James commented when he walked in at 9:30. "Big day," I replied, not looking up from my screen. Lot to prepare for. He had no idea just how big the day would be. "He's getting suspicious," I told Linda over a secure line. "He asked about the McKinley contract yesterday. Wanted to know if I'd been in touch with them directly. Did you maintain your composure?" "I think so." Said I was just checking on the creative deliverables. Good. The forensic accountant has finished his preliminary analysis. It's worse than we thought. My heart sank. "How much?" "Nearly $500,000. And there's evidence he's been manipulating the tax filings. The IRS would be very interested." I closed my eyes, leaning against my kitchen counter. The house was quiet. I'd sent my wife and daughter to her mother's for the weekend, making up a story about a plumbing issue. I couldn't risk them seeing me unravel. "There's something else," Linda continued. "He's been negotiating to sell the company." "What?" "He can't do that without my signature. Apparently he's found a way. There's paperwork suggesting you've already approved the sale. Your signature is on it." My blood went cold. "He forged my signature?" "It appears so. This changes things. We need to move faster." I thought of the business we'd built, the clients who trusted us, the 15 employees whose livelihoods depended on our success. "What's the next step?" I asked. "We're ready to present everything to the DA. With the evidence you've gathered, they'll likely move quickly." "When?" "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched before me. Tomorrow, James's world would collapse. A man I once called brother would face the consequences of his betrayal. I felt no triumph, only a heavy resignation. The truth demands its price from everyone, even those who seek it. I barely slept. When my alarm went off at 6 a.m., I was already staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I would say to our employees after the arrest. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Need to talk." "Coffee at Merton's?" 7:30? I showed the message to Linda when she picked me up at 7. "It's a good sign," she said. "He doesn't suspect. The DA is prepared, but we have time for this meeting if you want to go. I want to hear what he has to say. Remember, don't confront him. Just listen. We have everything we need." Merton's was quiet at that hour, just a few early commuters getting their caffeine fix. James was already seated at a corner table, 2 coffees waiting. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I've been doing some thinking," he continued, stirring his coffee absently. "About the company. About our partnership." "Oh? We've built something good, you and I. But I think it's time for a change." I took a sip of coffee. "What kind of change?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I've had an offer. For the company. A very generous offer. From whom?" "Donaldson Media Group. They want our client list and creative portfolio. They're willing to pay $7 million. $7 million. The number hung in the air between us. That's surprising, I managed. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. We cash out, walk away clean? You could start that design studio you've always talked about. I could, he hesitated, explore other opportunities. Run, he meant. Take his stolen money and disappear before anyone discovered what he'd done. I'd need to see the details, I said carefully. Of course. He slid a folder across the table. It's all here. The only catch is they need an answer today. By noon, The urgency confirmed what I already knew. He was running scared. "I'll look it over," I said, taking the folder. "This is a good thing," he insisted, his eyes searching mine. "For both of us." I thought of the evidence waiting at the DA's office. The years of deceit, documented in meticulous detail. "We'll see," I replied. The district attorney's office was a monument to bureaucratic efficiency. All fluorescent lights and beige walls. Linda and I were escorted to a conference room where 3 people waited. District Attorney Sharon Mathis, an assistant DA whose name I immediately forgot, and a stern-looking man introduced as Special Agent Briggs from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. "Mr. Parker," Mathis began after introductions, "I've reviewed the evidence your attorney has provided. I must say, it's one of the most comprehensive cases of financial malfeasance I've seen from a civilian." "I was thorough," I said simply. "Indeed. Agent Briggs?" The FBI agent nodded. "The interstate nature of some transactions, plus the tax implications, bring this under federal jurisdiction as well. We're particularly interested in these offshore accounts." He pointed to documents I'd photographed from the safe. "Based on what we're seeing, we're prepared to move forward with an arrest today. Mr. Wallace faces multiple felony counts." I stared at the evidence spread across the table, printed emails, bank statements, transcripts of recorded conversations, my meticulous documentation of betrayal. "There's something else," I said, placing the folder James had given me that morning on the table. "He's trying to sell the company. Today, without proper authorization." Mathis examined the documents, her eyebrows rising. "This adds wire fraud and attempted securities fraud to the charges. When will you arrest him?" Linda asked. "We can have agents at your office within the hour," Briggs replied. The moment had arrived. After months of secret investigation, of carrying the weight of discovery alone, justice was at hand. Yet I hesitated. "Is there a problem, Mr. Parker?" Mathis asked, noticing my silence. I was just thinking about our employees. "They have no idea what's coming." "Unfortunately, that's often the case in these situations," she said, not unkindly. "We'll try to be discreet, but I can't promise there won't be disruption." I nodded slowly. "I understand." Then with finality, "Do what needs to be done." I returned to the office before the FBI. I needed to see James one last time as just my partner, not as a criminal being led away in handcuffs. He was in his office, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly. When he saw me in the doorway, he quickly ended the call. "Well?" he asked expectantly. "Did you review the offer?" I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I did. And I sat down across from him. The desk between us might as well have been an ocean. "Why, James?" His expression flickered. Confusion, then wariness. "What do you mean?" "It's a great offer, not the offer. The rest of it. The stealing. The lies." He stared at me for a long moment. Then his face transformed into something I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, devoid of the friendship I'd thought defined our relationship. "You don't know what you're talking about. $500,000, James. Offshore accounts. Forged signatures. Tax fraud." He leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at his lips. "You can't prove any of that." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I placed my phone on the desk between us and played one of the recordings. James instructing our accountant to create false expense reports. His smile faltered. "That's just the beginning," I said quietly. "I have everything. The FBI is on their way here now." He stood abruptly. "You're bluffing, am I?" The silence stretched between us, taut with 20 years of friendship collapsing into dust. "I can explain," he finally said, voice suddenly conciliatory. "It's not what you think. I was borrowing against future earnings. I was going to pay it all back. You stole from me, James. From our clients. From our employees. That's not fair. I built this company as much as you did, which makes your betrayal even worse." His face hardened again. "This isn't about betrayal. It's business. Everyone cuts corners. Not like this. You self-righteous bastard," he hissed, mask completely dropped now. "You think you're so perfect? So clean? You have no idea what it takes to keep a company like this afloat." I stood up slowly. "No, I don't. Because you hid it from me. Every step of the way. Because you couldn't handle it. The real world isn't your precious design studio where everything is beautiful and perfect. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty. There's a difference between dirty hands and stealing $500,000. He laughed bitterly. You know what your problem is. You still think life is fair. That playing by the rules gets you ahead. Wake up. The only people who succeed are those willing to take what they want. Through the glass walls of his office, I saw them arrive. 4 people in suits, moving with purpose through the reception area. Our employees watched in confusion as they approached. James followed my gaze, his face draining of color. You actually did it, he whispered. You called the FBI on your best friend. You stopped being my friend the moment you betrayed my trust. As the agents reached his door, James looked at me one last time. This was supposed to be our legacy, he said quietly. No, I replied as the door opened. The legacy will be what I rebuild from what you destroyed. The arrest was both more dramatic and more mundane than I'd imagined. There was no shouting, no desperate attempt to escape. James surrendered with a strange dignity, hands extended for the handcuffs as our employees watched in stunned silence. James Wallace, Agent Briggs announced formally, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. As they led him away, James didn't look at me again. His gaze remained fixed forward, shoulders squared, the perfect posture of a man who still believed himself the hero of his own story. The moment they disappeared into the elevator, 15 pairs of eyes turned to me, filled with confusion, fear, and dawning comprehension. I took a deep breath. Everyone, conference room. 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes were the longest of my life. I stood in my office, staring out the window at the city below, trying to compose the right words. When I entered the conference room, the silence was deafening. Our team, designers, account managers, copywriters, people who had trusted us with their careers, their livelihoods. As you just witnessed, I began, voice steadier than I felt. James has been arrested. This is the result of an investigation that revealed he has been embezzling company funds and committing fraud for at least the past 2 years, gasps. And murmurs rippled through the room. No, this is shocking. I was shocked too when I discovered it 3 months ago. Since then, I've been working with authorities to document the extent of his actions. Are we going to lose our jobs? Sarah from accounting asked, voicing the fear I saw on every face. No, I said firmly. The company will continue. It will be difficult. I won't lie to you about that. But the creative work we do, the relationships we've built with clients, those are real. Those have value. How bad is it? Michael, our senior designer, asked. Financially? Significant, but not insurmountable. The most important thing now is transparency. With you, with our clients, with ourselves. I looked at each of them in turn. I understand if this changes how you feel about working here. If anyone wishes to leave, I will provide the strongest recommendations possible. But for those who stay, I promise you this. We will rebuild something better. Something honest. The questions continued for over an hour. I answered everything as truthfully as I could. By the end, exhaustion had settled over all of us. The emotional toll of having foundations shaken. One last thing, I said, as they prepared to leave. Take the rest of the day off. Be with family. Process this. Tomorrow we start fresh. As they filed out, Diane, our office manager who had been with us since the beginning, paused at the door. He fooled us all, she said quietly. Not just you. A small kindness, but one I needed more than she could know. The days that followed blurred together in a cascade of legal meetings, client calls and late nights reconstructing our financial records. The FBI seized James's computer and files, but provided copies of what I needed to keep the business running. Most clients stayed, though some left immediately. I couldn't blame them. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. I moved into James's office, not out of any desire for his space, but because it contained the financial infrastructure of the company. Each night, I would sit at his desk, combing through years of transactions, trying to separate legitimate business from his elaborate fraud. It was during one such late night that I found it, a folder hidden in an encrypted partition on his backup drive that the FBI had overlooked. Inside was a document titled Contingency. My hands shook as I opened it. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Maybe you got sloppy, maybe someone got lucky. Doesn't matter. What matters is protection. Contact information for Andrew Merrick, attorney. He has instructions and access to the secure accounts. The password phrase is Toronto Winter Sunset. He'll know what it means. The insurance files are your leverage. Use them if necessary. Remember, nothing is illegal until they prove it in court. The document continued with details of hidden accounts, instructions for accessing digital assets I hadn't known existed, and a list of pressure points for various clients and business associates. I sat back, stunned. Even now, under arrest and facing trial, James had an escape plan. The insurance files, the recordings of clients I'd discovered in the safe, were intended as blackmail material. I printed the document, then deleted the file and reformer. Ted the drive. Some truths were better shared only with prosecutors, not with the whole company. That night, I called Linda from my car. He has a contingency plan, I explained. Describing what I'd found. This is significant, she said. The prosecutor needs to see this immediately. It demonstrates premeditation and ongoing criminal intent. There's more, I said. An attorney named Andrew Merrick is apparently holding assets for him. Merrick, she repeated. I know of him. He has a reputation for creative financial arrangements. If he's involved, this could be even more extensive than we thought. What should I do? Bring the document to my office first thing tomorrow. And don't tell anyone else what you found. If James has set up contingencies, he may also have people watching you. The thought sent a chill through me. I glanced in my rearview mirror, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. You think he has people following me? Probably not literally. But be careful what you say to mutual acquaintances. Information has a way of traveling. After we hung up, I sat in my parked car for a long time, watching the empty street. The betrayal I'd uncovered wasn't just financial. It was a complete moral corruption that made me question every moment of our 20-year friendship. Had any of it been real? The preliminary hearing was set for a Tuesday morning in early March. I arrived at the courthouse to find a small group of business reporters waiting. News of the arrest had spread through industry circles. Mr. Parker, can you comment on the charges against your partner? Will the company survive this scandal? I pushed past them without answering, following Linda's advice to make no public statements that might complicate the case. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and austere. I sat in the back, watching as James was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He'd lost weight in the 3 weeks since his arrest. For a moment, our eyes met across the room. No recognition flickered in his gaze, just a cold assessment, as if I were a stranger. The proceedings were brief and technical. James pleaded not guilty to all charges. His attorney, an expensive-looking man in a tailored suit, requested bail. Your Honor, Mr. Wallace has deep ties to the community. He poses no flight risk. The prosecutor, a young woman with a severe expression, rose. The defendant had already begun liquidating assets and had researched non-extradition countries in the weeks before his arrest. Furthermore, new evidence has come to light suggesting he has hidden substantial funds offshore. She held up a copy of the contingency document I'd found. The judge denied bail. As James was led away, he turned to look at me once more. This time his expression was clear. Pure hatred. Outside the courtroom, Linda intercepted me before the reporters could approach. That went as expected, she said, guiding me toward a side exit. The prosecution has a strong case. They're already talking plea deal. What kind of deal? Reduced charges in exchange for full financial disclosure and restitution. Do you think he'll take it? She shook her head slightly. Hard to say. Men like James often believe they're smarter than the system, that they can find a way out. As we pushed through the exit door into the parking garage, a woman stepped out from behind a pillar. Mid-40s, expensively dressed with red-rimmed eyes. Emma, I said, recognizing James's wife. Linda tensed beside me, hand moving to my arm in warning. How could you? Emma demanded, voice raw with emotion. After everything, how could you do this to him? I carefully extricated myself from Linda's grip and faced her directly. Emma, I'm sorry. But James did this to himself. You were his best friend, she cried. You were supposed to protect each other. He stole $500,000, I said gently. He was selling the company without my knowledge. He forged my signature. He made mistakes, she insisted. Everyone makes mistakes. These weren't mistakes. They were calculated decisions, made over and over again for years. She stepped closer, finger jabbing at my chest. You've destroyed our family. Are you happy now? Our daughter can't go to school without people whispering. Our son, her voice broke. Despite everything, I felt a surge of sympathy. Emma was another victim of James's deception. I truly am sorry for what your family is going through, I said. But James knew the risks he was taking. He knew what would happen if he was caught. He said you were jealous of him, she said, wiping angrily at her tears. That you couldn't stand his success. That you set him up. Is that what he told you? I asked softly. He wouldn't lie to me. I could have laughed at the irony, but there was no joy in this moment. Emma, I wish that were true. For your sake, Linda stepped forward. Mrs. Wallace, this conversation isn't appropriate while legal proceedings are ongoing. I suggest you speak with your husband's attorney. Emma's gaze hardened. This isn't over, she said, then turned and walked away, heels echoing in the concrete garage. That, Linda said when Emma was out of earshot, is why we don't engage with family members of the accused. She deserved some explanation. She deserved the truth, which she's clearly not getting from her husband, but you're not the one who should be providing it. As we drove away from the courthouse, I found myself thinking about Emma's words. Our daughter can't go to school without people whispering. The ripple effects of betrayal spread far beyond the original participants. I wondered how many lives James had damaged in pursuit of his greed, including perhaps my own. 6 months passed. The company survived, though diminished. We lost nearly 30% of our clients in the immediate aftermath, but those who stayed became more loyal than ever. Transparency, I discovered, could be a powerful foundation for trust. Hired a new financial director with impeccable credentials and implemented a system of checks and balances that would have prevented James's fraud had they been in place from the beginning. Slowly, we began to rebuild. The legal process ground forward at its own glacial pace. Motions and countermotions, discoveries and depositions. I testified twice, recounting the same facts under oath that I had already provided in written statements. James's contingency plan partially worked. The offshore accounts proved difficult for authorities to access without his cooperation, but his freedom remained out of reach, and with each passing month, the pressure on him increased. I wasn't prepared when Linda called on a Wednesday afternoon. He wants to meet, she said without preamble. James. Yes. His attorney contacted the prosecutor today. He's offering full financial disclosure, complete restitution, and guilty pleas to reduce charges. In exchange, he wants a meeting with you. Why? He didn't specify. But given the terms he's offering, the prosecutor is inclined to facilitate it. I stood at my office window, watching the city below. People moving through their lives, unaware of the currents of betrayal and consequence swirling around them. What do you think his angle is? Hard to say, Linda replied. It could be genuine remorse. More likely he believes he can manipulate you in some way. To do what? The evidence is already in. Perhaps to speak favorably about him at sentencing. Perhaps something else entirely. The question is, are you willing to meet? I thought of James in his prison jumpsuit, of Emma's tear-streaked face, of the employees who had weathered the storm with me. Yes, I decided. I'll meet him. The prison visiting room was stark and institutional. Metal tables bolted to the floor, uncomfortable chairs, guards positioned at regular intervals. No physical barriers separated visitors from inmates, but the psychological distance was immeasurable. James entered escorted by a guard. He'd lost more weight and his once impeccable hair was cropped short. But his eyes were clear, focused. He sat across from me without speaking. For a long moment, we simply observed each other, like specimens under glass. Thank you for coming, he finally said. Voice rougher than I remembered, I nodded, waiting. My lawyer tells me I'm looking at 15 years, he continued. With good behavior, maybe I serve 8. I'm not here to discuss your sentence, I said evenly. He leaned forward slightly. Why are you here? You requested this meeting. You tell me. A fleeting smile crossed his face. Still direct. Some things don't change. Many things don't change. Consequences of actions. Truth. Justice. Such big words, he said almost sadly. I remember when we used to dream big together. Before everything became so moral. This isn't about morality, James. It's about choices. You chose to steal. I chose to survive, he countered. The company was failing. You didn't see it because you were too busy with the creative side, too concerned with artistic integrity. We were 3 months from bankruptcy. I stared at him in disbelief. That's not true. The financial reports were what you needed to see, he finished. To keep you creating, to keep clients happy while I found ways to keep us afloat. By stealing? By being creative with cash flow. Yes, I crossed lines. Yes, I made mistakes, but it started from a place of protecting what we built. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. But James had always been an excellent liar. It was what made him such an effective salesman. Even if that were true, I said carefully, it doesn't justify what you did. He shrugged slightly. Maybe not, but I wanted you to know. It wasn't all a lie. Our Yanship, the company. It meant something. Then why the contingency plan? Why the offshore accounts and the blackmail files? His expression flickered, surprised that I knew about those details, quickly masked. Insurance. The business world is ruthless. You never understood that? No, I understood it perfectly. I just chose not to become ruthless myself. He sat back, a strange calm settling over his features. I'm going to plead guilty. Full disclosure of all financial records. Complete restitution to the company. In exchange for what? A statement from you at my sentencing. Not support, necessarily, just context. Our history. The good we accomplished before things went wrong. I considered him. This man I'd once trusted with everything. This stranger wearing my friend's face. Why does that matter to you? Something vulnerable flashed in his eyes, so quickly I almost missed it. Because when this is over, and I've served my time, I want something left. Some recognition that it wasn't all criminal. That we built something real once. I didn't respond immediately. The guard shifted position behind him, a reminder that our time was limited. I'll think about it, I finally said. As I stood to leave, James spoke again. Softer now. For what it's worth. I am sorry. Not just for getting caught. For betraying your trust? I paused, one hand on the back of my chair. I believe you, I said. But it doesn't change anything. The courtroom was packed on the day of sentencing. Industry observers, former clients, even a few competitors had come to witness the final chapter of a scandal that had rippled through our professional community. I sat in the front row beside Linda, watching as James was led in. He wore a suit today, though it hung loose on his thinner frame. He'd regained some of his composure during the months of legal proceedings, the James Wallace charm, diminished but not extinguished. The judge entered, and we all rose, then sat again on command. After preliminary statements, the prosecutor summarized the case against James. The fraud, the embezzlement, the tax evasion, all meticulously documented and now admitted in his guilty plea. The state recommends a sentence of 10 years, with possibility of parole after 5, plus full financial restitution to the victims, she concluded. James's attorney rose next, painting a picture of a man who had made grave mistakes but who had cooperated fully, who had shown remorse, who had no prior criminal record. Before sentencing, Your Honor, we have a witness who can speak to Mr. Wallace's character and contributions prior to these unfortunate events. The judge nodded. And suddenly, all eyes turned to me as I was called forward. I had thought carefully about this moment during the sleepless nights that followed my prison visit with James. What would I say? What could I say that honored both truth and the history we had shared? I took the stand and was sworn in. Mr. Parker, the judge said, you were Mr. Wallace's business partner and the primary victim of his crimes. Yet you've agreed to speak today. Please proceed. I looked at James, seated at the defense table. He met my gaze steadily. Your Honor, I've known James Wallace for 20 years. We built a company together from nothing to a respected industry presence. During those years, I trusted him completely, with our finances, with client relationships, with my professional future. I paused, gathering my thoughts. His betrayal was therefore not just financial, but personal. He violated a trust that went beyond business. And the damage he caused extends to our employees, our clients, and his own family. James's expression remained neutral. But I saw his hands tighten on the table edge. However, I would be dishonest if I didn't acknowledge that before his crimes, James Wallace contributed significantly to our industry. He created employment opportunities. He mentored young professionals. He helped build something of value. I turned slightly to address the judge directly. Those contributions don't excuse or mitigate his crimes, but they are part of a complete picture of the man before you today. I believe in justice, Your Honor. I also believe that justice should be informed by the fullness of truth. Thank you, Mr. Parker, the judge said. You may step down. As I returned to my seat, I caught James's eye once more. He nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude. The judge considered for several minutes, reviewing documents before her. When she looked up, her expression was stern. Mr. Wallace, you have pled guilty to serious financial crimes that involve not just theft, but profound breaches of trust. You abused your position, you betrayed your partner, and you potentially jeopardized the livelihoods of everyone connected to your company. She leaned forward slightly. However, I also note your cooperation with authorities, your lack of prior criminal record, and the statement from Mr. Parker regarding your positive contributions before these events. I sentence you to 7 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 4 years. Additionally, you will make full restitution to your company and victims, and you will be barred from serving as an officer in any public company for 15 years following your release. The gavel fell with a sharp crack. As James was led away, he turned toward me. No words were exchanged, none were necessary. In that final glance was everything: remorse, resignation, and the ghost of a friendship destroyed by greed. I left the courtroom feeling neither victory nor defeat, only the hollow certainty that justice, while necessary, heals no wounds. It merely draws a line beneath them. 1 year later, I stood in the lobby of our new offices, smaller but somehow more vibrant than our previous space. Around me, employees gathered for a modest celebration, our first profitable quarter since the crisis. I'd like to say a few words, I announced, tapping a spoon against my glass. The room quieted. A year ago, many predicted we wouldn't survive. The scandal, the financial damage, the loss of trust, it seemed insurmountable. I looked at the faces around me, some who had weathered the storm from the beginning, others who had joined us more recently, bringing fresh energy and ideas. But here we are, not just surviving, but beginning to thrive again. This isn't my achievement, it's ours. Each of you made a choice to believe in what we could rebuild together. Diane, still our office manager, raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said. To new beginnings, the room echoed. Later, after the others had gone, I stood at the window of my office, watching the city lights emerge as dusk fell. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Dinner's ready when you are. Don't work too late. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had been absent for too long. On my desk lay a letter that had arrived that morning, postmarked from the Federal Correctional Facility where James was serving his sentence. I hadn't opened it yet, uncertain whether I wanted to reopen those wounds. After a moment's hesitation, I picked it up and carefully broke the seal. I've had a lot of time to think. James had written in his familiar, precise handwriting about what I did, about why I did it, about who I became when I stopped seeing you as my friend and started seeing you as an obstacle to what I wanted. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed, and that understanding is its own kind of punishment. The company is yours now, truly yours. Build it into something I couldn't. Something better than we imagined. J. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Then I turned off my computer, gathered my coat, and headed for the elevator. Outside, the evening air was cool and clear. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the building where I had experienced both my greatest professional triumphs and my most painful betrayal. The truth had cost us both dearly. But unlike James, I could walk freely into the night, toward home and family and a future unbound by bars. Some would call that justice. I simply called it living with truth. As I hailed a taxi, I felt the weight of the past year begin to lift. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but finally ready to be placed where it belonged, behind me.